Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Vocational Education and Training, SOVET, Diploma. Postgraduate Diploma in Pharmaceutical Sales Management, PGDPSM. MVE-001 Introduction to Anatomy, Physiology and Pharmaceutical Chemistry. Unit 1 Cellular Studies of Human Tissues and Organ Systems. 1.1 Introduction. In this unit you will study about the composition of the human body. You will study how the cells in the body form tissues and tissues form organs and various organ form systems, and this system together form the entire human body. This unit first describes the structure of the cell and the cell cycle. It also describes the important functions of the cell. This unit then describes the various types of tissues and their functions in the human body. After this, the circulatory system and the skeletal system have been described. Emphasis has been given on the general composition of these organ systems and their physiological role. Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to times describe the structure and function of the cells. Times write about the various stages of the cell cycle. Times describe the properties and functions of the four major animal tissue types in the human body. Times elaborate about the architecture of the circulatory system. Times describe the various components of the circulatory system and write about their role in circulation of blood. Times describe the various components of the skeletal system, and times discuss the different types of joints in the body. 1.2 Cells and cell structure. The human body, on an average, may have as many as 1014 cells. All cells are composed of a cell membrane, which is the thin protective layer of the cell. 2. The cytoplasm, which forms the fluid of the cell, in which various structures called organelles, like the nucleus, consisting of nucleolus and chromatin, network enclosed in a nuclear membrane, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, lysosomes, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, centrosomes, and other cytoplasmic inclusions are suspended. The plasma membrane has structural and functional continuity with the elaborate membrane system consisting of nuclear membrane, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, chloroplasts, and the Golgi apparatus. However, the plasma membrane has more cholesterol than membranes of organelles. Figure 1.1. Human cell. A. A cutaway section of the cell showing its features. B. Diagrammatic representation of the cell. Look at the screen. 1st February 2001 Components of the cell. Let us now study the important components of the cell in some detail. I. Cell membrane. The cell or plasma membrane is the outer, protective layer of the cell that encloses the cytoplasm. It is 10 millimicrons, MU, thick. Fig. 1.2. The cell membrane separates the cell's internal environment from the environment outside, external. The cell membrane is a selective barrier, allowing the flow of certain materials into and outside of a cell and preventing others. It does so in order to maintain a proper environment for normal cellular activities. The plasma membrane also plays a key role in communication both among cells and between cells and their external environment. The structure of the plasma membrane is explained on the basis of fluid mosaic model, in which the molecular arrangement of the plasma membrane resembles an ever-moving sea of lipids in which many different Types of proteins are present. The basic framework of the plasma membrane is composed of a lipid layer consisting of two back-to-back layers, formed of three types of lipid molecules, namely phospholipids, lipids which contain phosphate group, which form 75% of the total plasma membrane lipid, 2. Smaller amounts of cholesterol, steroid with an alcohol, O, group that constitute 20% of the membrane lipid, and 3. Various glycolipids, lipids with sugary carbohydrate groups attached. Glycolipids form 5% of the membrane lipids and appear only in the membrane layer facing the extracellular fluid. The carbohydrate portions of glycolipids and glycoproteins form an extensive sugary coat called glycocalyx, which has important functions. The composition of the glycocalyx acts like a molecular signature that allows cells to recognize one another. Look at the screen. Figure 1.2, three-dimensional figure of a section of the cell membrane showing the lipid bilayer in which the proteins are dispersed in a mosaic arrangement. Proteins in the membrane are classified as integral or intrinsic proteins are proteins which extend into and through the lipid bilayer. 2. Peripheral or extrinsic proteins are proteins associated with membrane lipids or integral proteins at the inner or outer surface of the membrane. Generally, the peripheral proteins are exposed only on one side of the bilayer. The lipid layer functions as a barrier to the entry or exit of charged or polar substances. Some of the protein present in the plasma membrane act as gate keepers and regulate the passage of the polar molecules and ions into and out of the cell. 2. Cytoplasm. The cytoplasm lies inside the cell membrane and is composed mainly of 90% water. Most of the vital chemical reactions of the cell metabolism take place in the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm can be divided into two components. Systole, which is the fluid portion of the cytoplasm and consists mainly of water plus dissolved solutes and suspended particles, and 2. Organelles, which are highly organized subcellular part of cell structures, each with a characteristic shape and specific functions. For example, the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, centrosomes, lysosomes, mitochondria and Golgi complex. 3. Organelles. All the following organelles that are present in the cytoplasm will be briefly described. Nucleus. It is an important structure of the living cell and governs the activities of the cell. The nucleus is surrounded by a nuclear membrane, identical to the cell membrane, which encloses the nuclear fluid called nucleoplasm, in which are contained the chromatin, which is composed of the hereditary material of deoxyribose nucleic acid, DNA, that is combined with proteins called histones. Chromatin appears as tangled threads. However, chromatin during the cell division is visible as clearly visible structures called chromosomes. Fig. 1.3. Each human cell has 46 chromosomes. This is called diploid chromosomes number 2n. The ovum and sperm have only half the number, that is 23 chromosomes. Haploid number is equal to n. Each union of sperm and egg ensures that the embryo has 46 chromosomes. The nucleolus is a dense, tiny spherical structure is also present in the nucleolus. 2. Endoplasmic reticulum. It is an intricate system of membranes that divides the cell into its numerous compartments. Here are of two types: 1. Smooth ER and 2. Rough ER. Smooth ER is concerned with metabolism and synthesis of steroids and glycogen, and the rough ER, so called because of the presence of ribosomes, is concerned with protein synthesis. 4. Secretory granules. They store the secretory products of the cell. 4. Centrosomes. All cells have centrosomes, which consist of a pair of tiny, cylindrical structures located in the cytoplasm near the nuclear envelope, called centrioles. Centrioles are important during the process of cell division. Lysosomes. These are the suicide bags of the cells, which contain powerful hydrolytic enzymes. At the time of death of the cell, the lysosome membrane ruptures, spilling out its enzymes, which results in and self-digestion or autolysis of the cell. 6. Mitochondria. These are known as the energy powerhouse of the cell. They are involved in the generation of energy molecule, adenosine triphosphate, ATP, in the cell. ATP is used for various energy dependent processes of the cell. 7. Golgi complex. It consists of 3 to 20 flattened membranous sacs with bulging edges, called cisterns, that resemble a stack of naan bread. The cisterns are often curved, giving the Golgi complex a cup-like shape. Most cells have only one Golgi complex, although some may have several. The Golgi complex is more extensive in cells that secrete proteins into the extracellular fluid. Almost all proteins secreted by the cells are glycoproteins. The main function of the Golgi body is to add a carbohydrate group to the proteins manufactured by the shuttle. Vesicles containing proteins are budded off from the ER. These vesicles fuse with the cisternae at the bottom of the Golgi body. The protein is quickly transferred to the series of stacked, disc-shaped, flattened membranes of the Golgi body. This protein is transferred between the cisternae layers towards the top of the stack. The proteins, as they move towards the top of the stack, are progressively converted to glycoproteins. At the top of the stack, the secretory vesicles are budded off. These vesicles pass through the cytoplasm and fuse with the cell membrane, which discharges its contents to the outside. Exoketosis. A hydrolytic enzyme catalyzes a chemical reaction of the compounds like protein or carbohydrate or fat molecules by causing the removal or elimination of water and consequent breakdown of the compound into their simplest units. The membranes of the Golgi complex lack the ribosomes found on rough endoplasmic reticulum, PR, and so are called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. 1st February 2002. Activities of cell. Some general activities of cells are as follows. Irritability. Cells have the ability to detect and respond to environmental changes. 2. Nutrition. Cells are capable of selectively absorbing fluids and dissolved substances through the cell membrane, which can be used by the cell for energy, growth, or repair. 3. Respiration. Cells have the ability to respire and as a result produce energy by combining oxygen with nutrients, resulting in the formation of carbon dioxide, CO2, and water. 4. Excretion. Cells are able to discard waste materials through the cell membrane. Growth and reproduction. Cells have the ability to increase in size. When cells reach the limit of their growth, they are capable of dividing and so reproducing into two daughter cells. 6. Movement. Some cells have the ability of movement. 1.3 Tissue. Tissue is a collection of cells having similar origin, structure and function. 8. Number of cells in the body carry out a particular type of work and form a particular type of tissue. There are various types of tissues in the human body. The shape of the nucleus of the cell usually corresponds to the cell form or the shape and helps to identify the type of tissue. The basic cell tissues that occur in the body are Fig. 1.4. I. Epithelial. 2. Muscular. 3. Nervous. 4. Connective. In medicine, a tissue is not like a piece of tissue paper. It is a broad term that is given to any group of cells that perform a specific function. A tissue need not form a layer. Thus, the bone marrow is also a tissue. Figure 1.4. The four basic types of tissue. Look at the screen. 1st March 2001 Epithelium tissue. The epithelium generally provides a covering to tissues. It covers the body surfaces and lines body cavities. The epithelium helps in protection, absorption, excretion and secretion of various substances. The main histological features common to all epithelial tissues is that 1. The epithelial tissue consists of cells that are situated very close to each other. There is little extracellular material between epithelial cells. 2. Several types of junctional specializations unite adjacent epithelial cells. Tight junctions, desmosums and gap junctions. 3. All epithelia except for endocrine glands have one free surface, called the apical surface, which is exposed at the body surface or at the lumen space of the body cavity, duct, tube or vessel. 4. The lower surface of an epithelium, or basal surface, rests on a basement membrane, a non-living adhesive material secreted by the epithelium and the underlying connective tissue. 5. There are no blood vessels within the epithelial layer. 6. Epithelial cells are often characterized by frequent cell division because they are exposed to wear and tear and injury, necessitating replacement. Classification of epithelium on basis of their functions. There are two basic types of epithelial tissues on basis of their function. I. Glandular epithelia that make up most of the glands in the body. 2. Covering and lining epithelia form a continuous layer over all the free surfaces of the body. Classification of epithelium on basis of their cell types. Epithelial tissues are classified according to the shape of the cell forming the tissue into three types, which are 1. Squamous epithelium is flattened cells. 2. Conoidal epithelium is cube-shaped cells. 3. Columnar epithelium consists of elongated cells. Classification of epithelium on basis of their cell layers. In addition to this, the epithelium is also classified on the basis of the number of cell layers into two subtypes of epithelia. 1. Simple epithelium which has only a single cell layer. 2. Stratified epithelium which has more than one layer of cells. Blood, cartilage, and bone are usually considered connective tissue, but because they differ so greatly from the other tissues in this class, the phrase connective tissue proper is commonly used to exclude those three. 1st March 2002 Muscular tissue. Muscle tissue is the excitable, able to contract and relax, tissue of the body and possesses contractile ability, hence it is also called a contractile tissue. Muscle tissue is composed mainly of muscle cells, also called muscle fibers. Within the cells are myofibrils, that contain sarcomeres. These sarcomeres are composed of actin and myosin. The actin and myosin form the contractile filaments that move past each other and change the size of the cell. The function of the muscle tissue is to produce force and cause motion. Muscles can cause either locomotion of the organism itself or movement of internal organs. They are classified, Fig. 1.5 as I. Skeletal, 2. Smooth muscle, and 3. Cardiac muscles. I. Skeletal. Skeletal muscles are so called because they are usually attached to bones. These muscles are under conscious control, therefore they are also known as voluntary skeletal muscle. Each skeletal muscle fiber is an enormous multinucleate, consisting of a number of nuclei, cell, formed by the fusion of hundreds of myoblasts, muscle cells, end to end. Each fiber is surrounded by a thin membrane called sarcolemma. Fibers of skeletal muscle are long, cylindrical and unbranched. These muscle fibers also show distinct striations, having transverse streaks, due to which they are also called striated muscles, Fig. 1.5a. 2. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle or involuntary muscle tissue consists of small, unbranched, long, narrow, spindle-shaped cells. Each smooth muscle cell has a single, elongated, centrally located nucleus. The nucleus of the cell is surrounded by a small amount of cytoplasm. These cells are arranged parallel to one another and do not show any striations microscopically, hence this type of muscle is also called smooth muscle, Fig. 1.5b. This type of muscle is also called involuntary muscle because it acts to contract and relax without being under our conscious control. As you know, you just cannot will your intestines to contract, they just do. This is what causes that embarrassing grumbling while in public when you are hungry. Functionally, smooth muscle cells contract as a single unit. 3. Cardiac muscles. Cardiac muscle is unique as it shows some features of skeletal muscle and some features of smooth muscle. Cardiac muscle, as the name implies, is the muscle that makes up the wall of the heart. Cardiac muscle is similar to skeletal muscle in that it is striated and multinucleated. It is similar to smooth muscle in that its nuclei are centrally located and many cells are required to span the length of the muscle. It differs from both skeletal muscle and smooth muscle as its cells branch and is joined to one another via intercalated discs, Fig. 1.5c. Intercalated discs allow communication between the cells, due to which there is a sequential contraction of the cells from the bottom of the ventricle of the heart to the top, facilitating maximal ejection of blood from the ventricle during contraction. This occurs without nervous innervation to each cell or group of cells. Cardiac muscle also differs from the other two muscle types in that contraction can occur even without an initial nervous input. The cells that produce the stimulation for contraction without nervous input are called the pacemaker cells, as you will study later in this unit. 1st March 2003. Nervous tissue. Nervous tissue, as you have read, is one of among the four major classes of human tissue. The others being connective tissue, muscle tissue and epithelial tissue. Nervous tissue is also a type of excitable tissue, but it lacks contractile power. The function of the nervous tissue to communicate between various parts of the body. For this purpose, it plays a role in receiving and transmitting messages. It is composed of neurons or nerve cells, which transmit impulses, and 2. The glial cells that form the neuroglia, which assist in the propagation, transmission of the nerve impulse as well as provide nutrients to the neuron. All nervous tissue of an organism makes up its nervous system, which includes the brain, spinal cord, and nerves throughout the organism. Neurons or nerve cell fibers are easily stimulated and transmit impulses very rapidly. A nerve is made up of many nerve cell fibers, neurons, bound together by connective tissue. A sheath of dense connective tissue, the epineurium, surrounds the nerve. Blood vessels of various sizes can be seen in the epineurium. The endoneurium, which consists of a thin layer of loose connective tissue, surrounds the individual nerve fibers. Glial cells provide support and protection for neurons in the nervous system. They are thus known as the glue of the nervous system. The four main functions of glial cells are to surround neurons and hold them in place, 2. To supply nutrients and oxygen to neurons, 3. To insulate one neuron from another, and 4. To destroy pathogens and remove dead neurons. They also modulate neurotransmission. Neuron. The neuron is the structural and function unit of the nervous system. All neurons have the same basic structure, though they vary greatly in size and shape within the nervous system. The basic structure of neuron consists of cell body, 2 dendrites, and 3 axon, as shown in Fig. 1.6 and described below. Cell body. A neuron consists of a large cell body called perikaryon or soma that contains a nucleus and 2 cytoplasm called perikaryon, clusters of ribosomes and rough endoplasmic called nuclear bodies or nuclear substance are present in the cell body. These nuclear bodies are basophilic. Take up basic dye in nature. 2. Dendrites. Dendrites are protoplasmic projections that arise as numerous short projections from the nerve cell body. They constitute the receptor area of the neuron and so receive the information which they transmit into conduct input, the neuron. Dendrites thus transmit information towards the nerve cell body. Dendrites are not myelinated. Dendrites are without myelin sheath. Interneurons. Interneurons are the neurons between the sensory and motor neurons. 99.9% of all neurons are interneurons. The vast majority of neurons are interneurons. Interneurons are also called internecial neurons. 3. Axon. The axon is a long protoplasmic process which stretches from the cell body to a distance ranging from several millimeters up to 1 meter. The part of the axon where it emerges from the soma is called the axon hillock. Axons transmit nerve signals away from the nerve cell body towards other nerves, muscle, or glands. Neurons usually have only one axon. Many, but not all, axons are sheathed in a multiple layer called myelin sheath. The myelin sheath functions as a kind of electrical insulation, greatly facilitating nerve impulse transmission. The greater the amount of myelin around an axon, the faster is the rate of nerve impulse transmission. Gaps occur in the myelin sheath and are called as nodes of Runge. The terminal end of the Axon away from the cell body is called the terminal button or axon. Terminal or end bulb. This terminal button will be associated with another neuron in a synapse. Figure 1.6. Structure of a neuron. 1st March 2004. Connective tissue. Connective tissue is one of the 4 types of tissues in traditional classifications. The others being epithelial, muscle, and nervous tissue. The main function of the connective tissues is to support the body and to bind or connect together all types of tissue. The connective tissue also provides a mechanical framework, the skeleton, which plays an important role in locomotion. Connective tissues consist of cells and intercellular material. Fibroblasts are the most common cell types and are responsible for producing the fibers and other intercellular materials forming the connective tissue. Other cells that occur in the connective tissue, generally in the loose connective tissue, are adipose cell, adipocytes, mast cells, macrophages, leukocytes, and plasma cells. The connective tissue exists in a number of forms. However, all types of connective tissues have 3 basic structural elements. Fig. 1.7 I. Cells, 2. Non-cellular fibers, and 3. Non-cellular intercellular substance, matrix or ground tissue. The types of fibers that occur in the connective tissue are I. Collagen, collagenous, and 2. Elastic fibers, and 3. Reticular fibers. Collagen fibers are for strength, while the elastic ones are for elasticity of the tissue. Reticular fibers are for forming delicate structural framework. The consistency of matrix is highly variable from gelatin-like to a much more rigid material and so may be liquid, e.g. blood, semi-solid, e.g. connective tissue, or solid, e.g. bone. The other characteristic feature of all or most connective tissues is that they are times involved in structure and support. Times usually derived from mesoderm, middle layer of the embryonic layer. Times characterized largely by the traits of non-living tissue. Figure 1.7, a generalized structure of connective tissue showing its various components. Look at the screen. The various types of connective tissues differ on the basis of the proportions of the cells, fibers, present in the matrix, which depends on the particular nature and function of the connective tissue. Connective tissues are classified on basis of predominant fiber present into several types, as you can see Fig. 1.8. Figure 1.8. The various kinds of connective tissues. I. Loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue has abundant cells among few or loosely arranged fibers and aspires to abundant gelatinous ground substance. Loose connective tissue is the most common type of connective tissue. It occurs beneath the epithelium in skin and in many internal organs such as lungs, arteries, and the urinary bladder. This type of tissue also forms the protective layer over muscles, nerves, and blood vessels. The loose connective tissues is furthermore classified into I. Areolar tissue, 2. Adipose tissue, and 3. Reticular tissue. I. Areolar tissue. Areolar connective tissue holds organs and epithelia in place and consists of matrix, within which lie 2 kinds of proteinous fibers. A. White or collagenous fibers, and B. Yellow or elastic fiber. These fibers intercross, thus making a network. The space within the network is occupied by the matrix and various types of cells such as fibroblasts, histiocytes, basophils, plasma cells, pigment cells, mast cells, lymphocytes, etc. 2. Adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is a fairly loose connective tissue, containing large numbers of round-shaped, fat-storing cells called adipocytes which make up 90% of the tissue. Adipose tissue has a rich supply of blood and a high metabolic activity. Adipose tissue may develop anywhere, but it tends to accumulate beneath the skin, where it can act as a shock absorber and insulator. Women tend to have more adipose tissue than men. There are two types of adipose tissue: white adipose tissue, WAT, which is composed mainly of white fat cells, and brown adipose tissue, BAT, composed primarily of brown fat cells. 3. Reticular tissue. Reticular tissue consists of loosely arranged, branching, very thin, white, reticular, collagen fibers with a glycogen coating, present in a gelatinous ground substance. Reticular connective tissue is moderately rich in ground substance, and often has numerous undifferentiated mesenchymal cells. Reticular tissue provides a delicate structural framework for organ stroma, e.g., bone marrow, lymph nodes, spleen. 2. Dense connective tissue. Dense connective tissue is also called dense fibrous tissue. It has collagen fibers as its main matrix element. Dense connective tissue contains relatively few cells with much greater numbers of collagen fibers. It is divided into two subcategories: dense irregular connective tissue, which has bundles of collagen fibers that appears to be fairly randomly orientated, as in the dermis. Dense regular connective tissue that consists of closely packed densely arranged fiber bundles with clear orientation, such as in tendons, and relatively few cell. Elastic. Elastic connective tissue is rich in parallel bundles of elastic fibers, and is found in specialized sites, e.g., yellow ligaments of vertebral column, buccal cords. 3. Cartilage. Cartilage and bone are rigid, connective tissues. Cartilage, however, though tough and hard, is softer than bone. Cartilage is flexible, avascular, without blood vessels, and without nerves. Cartilage contains large quantity of clear, firm jelly-like ground substance or matrix of dense and elastic nature, in which living cartilage cells called chondroblasts are embedded in irregularly scattered fluid spaces called lacuna. The matrix is made up of chondrion, in which there is a delicate network of collagen fibers. Cartilage occurs in the human body in the ears, tip of the nose, and at joints such as the knee and between bones of the spinal column. Cartilage connective tissue is further subdivided into three types: Fig. 1.8. I. Hyaline. 2. Fibrous. And 3. Elastic. I. Hyaline cartilage consists of rubbery matrix as the ground substance, and living cartilage cells called chondrocytes, which are situated far apart in fluid-filled spaces, called lacuna. The matrix also contains a number of collagenous fibers. The cells are arranged in groups of 2 and 4. Hyaline cartilage is found in bones, articular cartilage, ribs, costal cartilage, and in long bones, epiphyseal cartilage. 2. Fibrous cartilage is also called fibrocartilage cartilage. It contains Cells which are larger in number, arranged in groups and placed inside. Lacuna. White fibrocartilage is an extremely tough tissue. The amount of collagen fibers present here is more than that found in hyaline cartilage. 3. Elastic cartilage. Basically, elastic cartilage is similar to cartilage, but it contains, in addition to the collagenous fibers present in its matrix, also an abundant network of branched yellow elastic fibers. This type of cartilage also consists of a number of cells in lacuna. Elastic cartilage differs from hyaline cartilage only because of the presence of enormous amount of yellow elastic fibers in the matrix. A tendon, or sinew, is a tough band of fibrous connective tissue that usually connects muscle to bone and is capable of withstanding tension. Tendons are similar to ligaments except that ligaments join one bone to another. Tendons and muscles work together and can only exert the pulling force. 4. Bone. Bone, osseous tissue, is a hard and rigid tissue and is the hardest amongst all the connective tissues. Bone makes up virtually the entire skeleton in adult. The bone consists of a large amount of ground substance or matrix in which living cells called osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and osteocytes are present. The matrix is impregnated with inorganic salts of calcium, 45%, organic solids like arsen, 35%, and water, 25%. Small amounts of sodium and magnesium is also present. In addition to this, the matrix contains numerous collagenous fibers and a large amount of water. There are two types of bones, I. compact or periosteal bones and 2. spondy bones or cancellous bones. Long bones are the examples of compact bone. Spondy bones are present in flat bones, ends of long bones and body of the vertebrae. The compact and spondy bones differ due to the manner in which the living bone cells and matrix are arranged, resulting in the formation of two very different patterns, namely, I. compact bone tissue or 2. spondy bone tissue. I. compact bone part. Compact, dense bone tissue consists of precise arrangements of microscopic cylindrical structures called osteons. The matrix and osteocytes of osteon are laid down in concentric rings around the central habergeon canal that contains blood vessels and nerve. If you look at compact bone tissue with naked eye, it looks very dense. You cannot see any cavities. The compact bone as a result is hard. Its outer layer serves as an attachment for the muscles, tendons and ligaments. It has an outer fibrous layer and an inner osteogenic layer. The osteogenic layer consists of cells like the osteoblasts, osteoclasts and the osteocytes. 2. Spondy bone part. In contrast to compact bone tissue, spondy, cancellous bone consists of an irregular lattice work of thin blades of bone called trabeculae. The spaces between the trabeculae contain blood vessels and bone marrow, which produces blood cells. Fig. 1.10. The bone marrow may be red or yellow in color depending on the amount of fat cells. The red bone marrow produces the red blood cells. With accumulation of fat, the red bone marrow changes into the yellow bone marrow. The most important function of the bone marrow is production of RBCs, reticuloendothelial cells, platelets, etc. The spaces between the trabeculae can be seen with naked eye and give spondy bone tissue its spondy Look. 5. Blood. Blood is a connective tissue consisting of cells separated by a liquid called the ground substance or plasma matrix, or simply as plasma. Fig.1.11a. Blood is a sticky fluid connective tissue with a slightly salty taste. It is fluid present almost everywhere and is distributed by means of blood vessels, arteries, veins, arterioles, venules and capillaries. It has a bright red or scarlet color when it flows in the arteries, but a dark red or purple color when it flows in the veins. It is slightly alkaline, pH 7.4. The plasma of the blood is a watery fluid and transports the salt glucose, wastes, carbon dioxide and hormones. The plasma also regulates the water balance for the blood cells. Several types of cells are present in the plasma, which are as follows. Fig.1.11. Look at the screen. Fig.1.11. 8. Components of human blood and their function. 8. Non-cellular components forming the plasma. B. Cellular components. Composition of blood. Blood has of two parts. I. Fluid or plasma that constitutes 55% of the blood. And 2. Suspended solid component of cells. Fig. 1.11b, that make up to 45% of the blood. I. Plasma. The plasma, Fig. 1.11a, is composed of water, 90 to 92%, and solids, 8-10%. The solids are in turn made up of electrolytes, plasma proteins, fats, hormones, coloring substances like bile pigments, etc. The important plasma proteins are serum albumin, serum globulin and serum fibrinogen. Serum albumin and fibrinogen are derived from the liver, whereas the serum globulins are derived from lymphocytes. 2. Blood cells. The cells, Fig. 1.11b, present in the blood are times white blood corpuscles. The white blood corpuscles are also called white blood cells or WBCs or leukocytes. These cells, unlike RBCs, are nucleated, have nucleus, and do not carry the oxygen-carrying pigment hemoglobin. WBC function in the immune system. The total WBC count of blood in humans is 4000-11,000 mm3. The WBCs are further subdivided, based on the presence of granules in their cytoplasm, into the following categories. Fig. 1.11b and 12a. 8. Are granulocytes. Granulocytes are characterized by the absence of granules in their cytoplasm. There are two types of granulocytes, I. Lymphocytes, and 2. Monocytes. Fig. 1.12a. B. Granulocytes. Granulocytes, Fig.1.12b, are white blood cells that are characterized by the presence of granules in their cytoplasm. They are also called polymorphonuclear leukocytes, PMN or PML, because of the varying shapes of the nucleus, which is usually lobed into three segments. Granulocytes are released from the bone marrow and are further divided into neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils. The WBCs in the body act as the first line of defense, especially neutrophils and monocytes, against invasion by microbes. These cells engulf, take inside, the invading organism through the process of phagocytosis and so destroy them. Times red blood corpuscles. The red blood corpuscles are also referred to as red blood cells or as RBCs or erythrocytes. The red blood corpuscles are circular, biconcave, disc-shaped, non-nucleated cells which contain the oxygen carrying pigment hemoglobin, Fig. 1.13. The normal RBC count is 5 million mm3 of blood in adult males and 4.5 million mm3 in adult females. The function of RBCs is the transport of oxygen, O2, and carbon dioxide, CO2, maintenance of viscosity of blood, and maintenance of acid-base balance since the hemoglobin, Hb, which is part of RBC acts as a buffering agent. Times platelets, thrombocytes. Platelets are small cytoplasmic bodies derived from cells, Fig. 1.11b. The platelets are cell fragments that function in blood clotting. The platelets are round or oval, non-nucleated bodies of varying size. The platelets circulate in the blood. They are one-fourth the size of RBCs. They are non-nucleated with the presence of distinct granules in their cytoplasm. In normal adults the platelet count is 250,000, 500,000 mm3. They are required for the process for initiation blood clot formation, repair of capillary leaks, clot retraction, etc. General functions of blood. Blood is an essential component of the body. It performs various functions in the body. The important functions of blood are listed below. 1. Blood transports oxygen by means of red blood corpuscles, also called red blood cells or RBCs, from the lungs to the tissue, and transport of carbon dioxide, CO2, from the tissue back to the lungs. 2. It transports nutrients from the digestive tract to various tissues of the body. 3. Blood acts as a vehicle for the movement of hormones, vitamins, pigments from their source to various parts of the body. 4. It maintains the fluid, electrolyte and acid-base balance in the body. 5. Blood helps in regulation of the body temperature. 6. It helps in the excretion through urine of waste products that form in the cells. 7. The white blood corpuscles, also called white blood cells or WBCs, present in the blood help in the body's defense mechanism against infection. 6. Lymph. Lymph is a modified fluid tissue containing 94% water and 6% solids. It differs from blood in the fact that only lymphocytes, 5000-75000 cm, of the white blood cells are present in it and red blood cells are absent. Lymph is thus similar in composition to blood plasma with various types of white blood cell floating in it. It flows in lymphatic vessels. 1.4 Circulatory system. The circulatory system is a closed circulatory transport system responsible for the transport of nutrients, gases and waste materials through the body by means of blood. Blood, as you will recall, is a fluid, connective tissue that flows within a closed system of vessels, namely the arteries, veins, capillaries, etc. Blood appears as red, viscous and slightly alkaline fluid. The total quantity of blood in the human body is approximately 5 to 6 liters. The important components of the circulatory system are the heart and the blood vessels, namely arteries and veins. Heart. The heart is a muscular organ lying in the upper left part of the chest. Fig. 1.14. It pumps blood through the blood vessels. The regular contractions of the heart, or when the heart pushes in, force the blood to the various parts of The body. A normal heart lies under the sternum, breastbone. The heart consists of three layers, the outer, tough, fibrous layer or pericardium that forms a bag-like structure around the heart and contains a fluid called the pericardial fluid. 2. The middle layer or the myocardium consisting of the muscular, contractile fibers and till. 3. Innermost layer is called the endocardium. Internal structure of the heart. The heart is made up of four chambers, viz. Two atria, singular atrium, and two ventricles. The walls of the atria are thin and serve as a filling reservoir, from which the blood is pushed into the ventricles. The ventricles are thick-walled and push the blood into either the pulmonary circulation, right ventricle, or systemic circulation, left ventricle. The muscle wall surrounding the left ventricle is thicker than the wall surrounding the right ventricle due to the higher force needed to pump the blood through the systemic circulation. When the blood goes from the atria to the ventricles, it goes through heart valves. When blood goes out of the ventricles, it goes through valves. The valves make sure that blood only goes one way in or out. The right atrium and right ventricle of the heart receive the deoxygenated blood from various parts of the body. The deoxygenated blood going to the heart is carried in veins. The blood is carried to the right atrium by the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. The deoxygenated blood then goes from the right atria to the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve. The blood bile going from the right atrium to the right ventricle passes through the valves too. Make sure that blood only goes one way from right atrium to right ventricle and prevents backflow. The right ventricle then pumps this blood to the lungs through the pulmonic artery, which is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. When blood goes out of the ventricles, it goes through pulmonary cellular valve present in the pulmonary artery. This valve also makes sure that blood only goes one way. In the lungs, gas exchange takes place as the blood takes up oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide by the passive process of diffusion. Blood from the lungs goes to the left atrium through the pulmonic vein, which is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. Then this oxygenated blood goes to the left atrium through the pulmonic vein, which is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood. Then this oxygenated blood goes to the left atrium. From the left atrium, the blood goes to the left ventricle through the mitral valve, which also prevents backward flow of blood. The left ventricle then pumps this oxygenated blood through the aortic cellular valve to the various parts of the body by the main artery called the aorta. The aorta forks, and the blood is divided between major arteries which supply the upper and lower body. The major artery divides into smaller arteries, which further divides into arterioles and then into capillaries. The blood thus travels in the arteries to the smaller arterioles, then finally to the tiny capillaries which supply each cell with oxygenated blood by giving up its oxygen and taking up carbon dioxide. Then the relatively deoxygenated blood travels to the venules, which coalesce into veins, then to the inferior and superior venae cavae, and finally back to the right atrium where the process began. Circulatory circuits. Pulmonary circulation. It is a short circulatory path in which venous or deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle of the heart travel in the pulmonary artery to the lungs for oxygenation. The oxygenated blood is returned to the left ventricle by the pulmonary veins. 2. Systemic circulation. The systemic circulation is concerned with transport of oxygenated blood to different tissues of the body. In this circulation, the oxygenated blood originating from the left ventricle is transported by the aorta to the various tissues. The aorta then divides and subdivides to form various branches which further end into capillaries which supply the oxygenated blood to different parts of the body. The deoxygenated blood is brought back to the heart by the inferior and superior vena cava blood vessels, which drain into the right atrium. 3. Coronary circulation. This is the circulation of the blood to the heart tissue. The coronary arteries arise from the base of the aorta and supply the musculature and other layers of the heart. The deoxygenated blood drains into the coronary sinus and the sinus then drains into the right atrium. Auto-rhythmic cells, the conduction system. The normal human heart beats continuously due to its own inherent and rhythmical electrical activity. The source of stimulation for this beating of heart is a network of specialized cardiac muscle fibers called the auto-rhythmic cells. As these cells are self-excitable, auto-rhythmic cells repeatedly generate spontaneous action potentials that trigger heart contractions. These auto-rhythmic cells have two important functions. They act as a pacemaker, setting the rhythm for the entire heart, and 2. They form the conduction system, the route for propagating action potentials throughout the heart muscle. The conduction system ensures that the heart chambers, namely the atria and ventricles, become stimulated to function as effective pumps. The electrical activity for pumping action of heart begins in a pacemaker region of the heart. Pacemaker cells are capable of spontaneous activity. The contraction of mammalian heart begins in a small piece of embryonic type muscle which forms the pacemaker. This pacemaker is located where the vena cava enters the right atrium. It is known as sinoatrial node, synode. Fig. 1.15. The contraction spreads to the two atria, and after a slight delay to the atrioventricular node, AV node. From here it spreads rapidly to the tip of the ventricles and to spread upwards to squeeze out blood in the most efficient way. It also ensures that both ventricles contract simultaneously. Two different mechanisms affect the heart rate, nerve impulse to the pacemaker region and hormonal influences. A branch of the vagus nerve of parasympathetic origin slows the heartbeat by releasing acetylcholine, while another nerve of sympathetic origin releases epinephrine and norepinephrine at the pacemaker end to increase the heartbeat. Figure 1.5. The electrical conduction system as well as the route of action potentials of the heart. Auto-rhythmic fibers in this node, located in the right atrial wall, act as the heart's pacemaker, initiating cardiac action potentials that cause contraction of the heart's chambers. Look at the screen. Cardiac cycle. The contraction of heart muscle is called systole. In contraction, the heart pushes in and this makes the chamber smaller. This pushes blood out of the heart and into the blood vessels. After the heart contracts and pushes in, the muscle relaxes or stops pushing in. The chambers get bigger and blood coming back to the heart fills them, while the relaxation of the heart muscle is called diastole. This occurs after the heart muscle stops contracting. At diastole, the Chambers of the heart get bigger and become filled by the blood coming back from the various parts of the body. Both atria contract or do systole together. Both ventricles also contract or do systole together. But the atria contract before the ventricles, even though the atrial systole occurs before ventricular systole. All four chambers relax or do diastole at the same time. This is called cardiac diastole. The sequence of systole and diastole is as follows: atrial systole, ventricular systole, cardiac diastole. When this happens one time, it is called a cardiac cycle. Types of blood vessels. The blood vessels, Fig. 1.16, are of two types. 1. The arteries, and 2. The veins. Figure 1.16, showing how the artery and vein connect by means of capillaries. A. Artery showing its three layers. B. Vein showing its three layers as well as one which prevents backflow. C. Capillaries connecting the arteriole with the venule. Look at the screen. 1. Arteries. These vessels carry blood from the heart to different organs and parts of the body. The blood in arteries is almost always oxygenated, with the exception of the pulmonary artery, which carries deoxygenated blood to the lung for purification. All the arteries are the branches of the main artery, called aorta. The arteries divide and subdivide to form smaller arteries, called arterioles. The arterioles finally terminate in capillaries, which are thin vessels lying between the cells. The capillaries connect the arteries to veins. The wall of an artery consists of three distinct layers. I. Tunica intima. 2. Tunica media. 3. Tunica adventitia. 2. Veins. These are the vessels which bring blood from various parts of the body back to the right atrium of the heart. The veins almost always contain deoxygenated blood, except in the case of the pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood back to the heart after oxygenation from the lungs. Veins are similar to arteries, but because they transport blood at a lower pressure, they are not as strong as arteries. Walls of veins are similar to those of arteries, in that they are composed of three distinct layers, though the middle layer is poorly developed. As a result, veins have thinner walls that contain less smooth muscle and less elastic tissue than arteries. Veins receive blood from the capillaries through venules after the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide has taken place. Venules are the microscopic vessels that continue from the capillaries and merge to form veins. Therefore, the veins transport waste-rich blood back to the lungs and heart. It is important that the waste-rich blood keeps moving in the proper direction and is not be allowed to flow backward. This is accomplished by valves that are located inside the veins and which act like gates that only allow traffic to move in one direction. In medical practice, the arterial blood pressure is measured, in which both systolic and diastolic pressure is measured. In contrast, blood pressures in the venous system are constant and rarely exceeds 10 mm Hg. Blood pressure. Blood pressure is defined as the lateral pressure exerted by the moving column of blood on the walls of the blood vessel. Blood pressure can be divided into I. Arterial blood pressure, 2. Venous blood pressure, and 3. Capillary blood pressure. The blood pressure in blood vessels is traditionally expressed in millimeters of mercury, 1 mmHg. Systolic blood pressure in the arterial system This refers to the maximum pressure during the systole, ventricular contraction, of the heart. The normal systolic blood pressure range is 110-145 mmHg. Diastolic blood pressure, in the arterial system, this refers to the minimum pressure exerted during the diastole, ventricular relaxation, and ranges normally from 70 to 90 mmHg. Pulse pressure. The difference between the systolic and the diastolic blood pressure is called pulse pressure and its normal range is 40 to 55 mmHg. 1.5 Skeletal system and joints. The skeleton or the osseous system forms the framework of the human body. The human skeleton is made up of 206 bones, Fig. 1.18. 1st May 2001. The skeleton. The skeleton can be divided into two parts. 1. The axial skeleton, skull, vertebral column and the thoracic cage. 2. Appendicular skeleton, bones of the upper and lower limbs, the scapula, the clavicle and the pelvic girdle. 1. The axial skeleton. The axial skeleton serves mainly to protect and support the internal structures of the body and consists of three main parts. Figure 1.18. The human skeleton. Look at the screen. 1. The skull. The skull is a large bony structure consisting of the 1. Cranium and 2. Facial bones that are attached to the cranium. The cranium is a large bony case that accommodates the brain. The skull bones consist of 1. Occipital bone, 2 parietal bones, 1 portal bone, 2 temporal bones, 1 sphenoid bone and 1 ethmoid bone. All of them are joined to each other by irregular edges called sutures. 2. The vertebral column. The vertebral column forms the axis to which other bones of the skeleton are attached. It consists of a series of vertebrae. There are 33 vertebrae. The top 7 are known as the cervical vertebrae. The next 12 of the chest region are known as the thoracic vertebrae. The next lower 5 are known as the lumbar vertebrae. The next lower 5, which are fused together, are known as the sacrum. The last portion of the vertebral column consists of 4 fused vertebrae is called the coccyx. The skull is attached to the top of the skeleton and pelvis is joined to the sacrum of the vertebral column. 3. Thoracic cage. The thoracic cage is formed by the thoracic vertebrae at the back, the sternum or the breastbone in the front and the 12 pairs of ribs on the side. 2. Appendicular skeleton. The appendicular skeleton mainly facilitates movement. The appendicular skeleton includes bones that make up the upper and lower limbs as well as bones called girdles pectoral, shoulder, girdle and pelvic, hip, girdles to which the limbs are attached. Thus the girdles attach the limbs to the axial skeleton. The appendicular skeleton is divisible into 1. Upper bones, 2. Lower bones, 1. Upper bones. The upper bones are composed of the 1. Shoulder, pectoral, girdle and 2. A pair of upper limbs. 1. The pectoral or shoulder girdle is formed by the clavicle and the scapula. 2. Each upper limb is composed of the A. Upper arm formed of the bone called humerus. B. Forearm, composed of the bones called ulna and the radius, which are collectively referred to as radioulna. C. Wrist composed of carpal bones. D. Palm formed by metacarpal bones and E. Fingers formed by the phalanges. 2. Lower bones. The lower bones are composed of the I. Pelvic girdle, and 2. A pair of lower limbs. The pelvic girdle is composed of the sacrum and coccyx in the back, and 2 hip bones on the sides. These hip bones join in the front to form the pubis symphysis. 2. The lower limbs. Each lower limb is formed of the A. Upper thigh bone called femur. B. Patella, kneecap. C. Lower part of hind limb which is below the femur and consists of 2 bones, the tibia, shin bone, and 2 fibula. Together, these bones are collectively referred to as tibio-fibula bone. D. Ankle, tarsus, which is formed of the tarsals. E. Intermediate region of the foot which is composed of metatarsals, also called metatarsal bones, and finally F. The toes formed of the phalanges. First, me 2002 joints, their composition and movement. A joint is a region where 2 or more bones unite. The joints are classified into 3 types based on their composition and the degree of movement associated with each joint in the skeleton. Fibrous joints. The connective tissue between the bones is formed of fibrous tissue and hence the bones are not movable. The sutures of the skull. Bones are examples of fibrous joints. Cartilaginous joints. In this type of joint, the connective tissue is formed of hyaline cartilage and therefore the joints are slightly movable. Examples of cartilaginous joints are intervertebral discs. 3. Synovial joints. A synovial joint is a freely movable joint where the bones are not directly in contact with each other. Synovial joints are further classified into the following subtypes. Pivot joint. In this type of joint, the part of one of the articulating bones fits into a group formed in the other bone, e.g. joint of the atlas and the axis. Ball and socket joint. In this type of joint, a ball-shaped part of one bone articulates within the cavity formed by the other bone. Example of ball and socket joint are the hip joint and the shoulder joint. Gliding joint. In this type of joint, the articulating faces of the bone slide over each other. For example, carpal joints of the wrist and the tarsal joints of the foot. Condyloid joint or ellipsoidal joints. In this type of joint, 2 bones fit together with an odd shape, e.g. an ellipse. In this joint, one bone is concave and the other is convex. Hinge joint. Here the movement is possible only in one plane, e.g. the elbow joint and knee joint. Saddle joint. This type of joint allows a great degree of movement between the bones, e.g. the thumb joint. 1.6 md times all cells are composed of a cell membrane, which encloses the ground substance or matrix called cytoplasm. The cytoplasm contains all the organelles. The nucleus, which contains the genetic material DNA, and nucleolus. 2. Smooth and rough endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, lysosomes, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, centrosomes, etc. Times the cell membrane is a dynamic, semi-fluid structure, which helps in the flow of material inside and outside the cell. Times tissue is a collection of cells having similar origin, structure and function. Times the 4 elementary tissues are epithelial, connective, muscular and the nervous tissue. Times the epithelial tissue or epithelium consists of cells that are situated very close to each other. The epithelial tissue on basis of function is divisible into glandular epithelia and 2 covering and lining epithelia. The connective tissues consist of cells and intercellular material. Fibroblasts are the most common cell types and are responsible for producing the fibers and other intercellular materials forming the connective tissue. The main function of the connective tissues is to support the body and to bind or connect together all types of tissue. The connective tissue also provides a mechanical framework, the skeleton, which plays an important role in locomotion. All types of connective tissues have three basic structural elements, I. Cells, 2. Non-cellular fibers, and 3. Non-cellular intercellular substance, matrix, or ground. Tissue. Bones, cartilage, blood are examples of connective tissue. Muscle tissue is the excitable tissue of the body and possesses contractile ability, hence it is also called a contractile tissue. Muscle tissue is composed mainly of muscle cells. The function of the muscle tissue is to produce force and cause motion. Muscles can cause either locomotion of the organism itself or movement of internal organs. They are classified as I. Skeletal, 2. Smooth muscles, or 3. Cardiac. Nervous tissue is also a type of excitable tissue, but it lacks contractile power. The function of the nervous tissue to communicate between parts of the body. For this purpose it plays a role in receiving and transmitting messages. It is composed of neurons or nerve cells, which transmit impulses, and 2. The glial cells that form the neuroglia, which assist in the propagation, transmission of the nerve impulse as well as provide nutrients to the neuron. All nervous tissue of an organism makes up its nervous system, which includes the brain, spinal cord, and nerves throughout the organism. The blood is composed of water, red blood cells, RBCs, white blood cells, WBCs, platelets, electrolytes and plasma proteins. The most important component of RBCs is hemoglobin, which helps in the transport of oxygen to the tissues. The most important function of blood is to transport oxygen, O2, from the lungs to the heart and from there to the various tissues, and also to transport carbon dioxide, CO2, given off from the tissues to the blood back to the heart and then to lungs for gas exchange, so that CO2 is given up and O2 is taken up by the blood. The heart is a muscular organ with rhythmicity that pumps blood throughout the body. The human heart is composed of 4 chambers, 2 atrium and 2 highly muscular ventricles. Blood pressure is defined as the lateral pressure exerted by the moving column of blood on the walls of the blood vessel. The human skeleton is made up of 206 bones. The skeleton can be divided into 2 parts, the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. A joint is a region where 2 or more bones unite. The joints of the skeleton are classified into fibrous, cartilaginous and synovial joints. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.